Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurs Rising. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Peter Moriarty, and I'm here with my good friend, Carl Taylor. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing incredible today, Pete.
Hey, incredible. That's awesome for Friday, mate. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm well rested and I am feeling good. This week's episode, we are talking about the road to wealth and income freedom. We're going to be talking about capitalism versus contribution. We're going to be talking about passive income. We're going to be talking about, why people desire money and why people chase building wealth and what does building wealth actually even mean. And we're going to be going right into all of the details on those. I'm excited about this because I feel like this is a lifelong passion of mine, Carl, and not necessarily like a lifelong thing that I'm chasing as my number one, but something that's just always been a part of my life, even from when I was like 15 years old and read Kiyosaki for the first time. What about you? Where did your wealth journey start?
Oh, I think I like you. It's back in early days of my childhood. I think there were two key shaping events in my life that really put me on that wealth generation, pursuit of wealth and success mindset. One, back in the 90s, my dad was retrenched. In the 90s, in Australia, we had the recession that we had to have, as it was called. And so my dad was retrenched and put out of work. And he was out of work for 18 months. And so that meant we were living on a public school teacher's salary as a family of four, which meant that I had a lot of affirmations around the values that money doesn't grow on trees and all these things. There's a lot of not options. It was quite tough for my family. And I don't remember all the ins and outs, but I remember clearly coming away from that going, I don't want this to be my life. I don't want my family. I don't want to have this lack of choice in the future. So it was that. The second big event that occurred was more like my high school teenage years. And I essentially was bullied a lot as a kid. And there was one key event. It was a metalwork class, and this guy had literally taken, those metal protractors, a bit like in math class, you had a protractor to draw circles. Yeah. Well, this is to draw on a piece of metal, so they were really sharp, right? You would etch it into the metal. And one of the students in the class, one of my tormentors, held this metal protractor millimeters away from my eye. Like it was just right up me, and I just wasn't going to move. And it was a really traumatic at the time event, and it took me a number of years before I could kind of work through it and clear some of the trauma around that event. But one of the things that was so powerful about that event, I left that class going, I will own you one day. I've never been a built person, but I was like, I will own you one day. Because at the time, my hero was Bill Gates. He was the richest man in the world. And I was like, I'm going to be Australia's Bill Gates. I'm going to be the richest man in Australia. That was my mindset. So those two key events really pushed me on this. How do I learn how to make money? And the first book I bought was like How to Turn $1 into $1 million in 7 years or less by Roy McDonald. That was the first ever wealth success book I bought. So that was my journey. Pete, what were your key events?
So that sounds like you, and you haven't told me that story before. So that's really interesting to actually hear that. It sounds like you experienced powerlessness, in the family situation that you had. And how old were you at the time then?
The family situation, I would have been maybe 10 or 10
or something. Yeah, because it was like 90s, right? So you experienced powerlessness there, and then you experienced the desire for power. With the bullying incident. That's really interesting. So my story around money is with my family. I may as well share that. It wasn't really something that was etched into me, but I had a pretty basic upbringing. Western Sydney, dad's a builder, carpenter, mum's a nurse. We never struggled to have food on the table, but it was pretty basic. We had a basic upbringing. It's not really something that was ever uncomfortable for me in a big kind of psychological way. But my parents divorced when I was 8 years old, and that was messy, and it was messy for many years. And I did the going back and forth between parents, and they still aren't really friends after 20 years later. And the challenge there for me was not feeling safe, and so not feeling like I had a safe home. Not feeling like I had a safe family life. And in my early teens, I developed the want or the need to have self-sufficiency as a way of having personal safety. It was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to look after myself here. And so if I can build wealth and income, then I can look after myself. And I found that, through my late teens, I started running, serious businesses and was starting to make serious money even in high school. and then in my early 20s, just continued to basically build this business. It wasn't until I'd done like nearly 10 years of therapy and I'd actually made enough money to live comfortably. I was making more than 80 grand a year when I was 25, that I kind of realized, oh, wow, holy shit. This has been a thing for me for so long. Anyway, but this episode is not biographical. Just sharing kind of like where that kind of started for me.
I think it's important that people understand that firstly, the desire for wealth, I think, is not a bad thing, but understanding maybe where it came from, right?
You got to look at it. You got to know.
Where did you get triggered? We all have our different thing that triggered that desire for wealth. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with desiring wealth, but it is worth exploring what led you on that path.
You got to know. Otherwise, you don't stop. you don't get off that train. Because I got to 25 and I'd done all this therapy and I'd unwound all this stuff and I'd reached a comfortable level of income. And I realized, oh, wow, holy crap, this is actually what's been driving me for all of this time, this hunger. And, people have witnessed me as a hungry and successful entrepreneur. And they've said, wow, I appreciate that hustle. And I appreciate that dedication to your cause. And I appreciate what you've built. And it's like, yeah, I appreciate that as well. But now I know that came from, in a way, a bit of a place of fear. And in a way of a place of trying to fill something in to feel that safety. And then after kind of like, bang, the penny dropped, it was like, oh, okay, well, now I can choose to exercise that hustle muscle and then, switch that on when I want to, but that doesn't have to be everything in my life. And that was probably one of the biggest shifts for me. And I've continued to choose building wealth. But when I see someone who's, making millions of dollars a year in revenue in their business and they're chasing being a billionaire, I go, wow,
why?
Who hurt you? And I don't want to trivialize anyone's experience. But there is potentially something there that is driving you that is unconscious that maybe you could take a little bit of a look at if you have that dogged, I must do this, unconscious drive to actually build wealth.
Yeah. And again, I think it's really important for us to state that we in no way judge someone for what they are. I won't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. I have no judgment on whether I agree with you that it's worth potentially looking at what is driving that and is it a healthy driver? And I think it shifts. I, like you, my beginning of this, the wealth journey, was a scarcity. It was a fear-based approach. I was fearful of being in the same situation. And I also wanted to be more powerful. I wanted significance. So it came from fear and uncertainty, and I wanted significance. And then over time, I've been able to shift out of that ego need for wealth and success and move more to a place of contribution. And you can still use contribution to pursue higher levels of income and higher levels of wealth, but it comes from a far healthier, in my opinion, space.
So let's talk about that journey. We've started with desiring wealth, desiring income. We've talked previously about, what motivated us, what books motivated us and those kind of things. I think let's talk about, what is wealth and what is income, where let's define these before we jump into the relationships and the other things. You've mentioned something to me in the past, which is 3 different types of income. I'm interested to explore that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, the way I think about it is, you read books, you hear about passive income, you hear about, swapping time for money. And so I see that most people out there, they put income into 2 buckets, swapping time for money and passive income. I don't see it that way. I believe there are 3 types of income. And the way I look at my life, my business, all my things, I break it into these 3 buckets. So there's the swapping time for money, active income, right? So you've got active income. This is where literally there is a direct correlation on the income you earn based on the time input you put in. And so when you're doing something that's active income, to make more money in your active income space, you either need to work more hours or you need to charge a higher rate per hour. Are you
just talking about consultants, or do you include business owners in that?
I'm talking business owners who might be working inside their business, paying themselves a salary. I'm talking about an employee who works in a business. at any time that you are directly swapping your time for money, so yes, it could be a consulting business, or it could be you as an employer in your own business, that is an active income source.
Yeah.
And I have active income sources. I'm not purely passive, right? But it's about me understanding what are the things I'm doing that are active income. And I'm fortunate and grateful to be in a position now that I can choose what I put my active income focus on to make sure they're the things I enjoy doing. So I'm not against active income as long as active income is something that I find fun, enjoyable, and it's something that's good. If I'm doing something active income now that does not make me feel good, I won't do it.
Yeah.
Or I'll shift it into the second type of income. And the second type of income is leveraged income. And leveraged income is similar to active income, except it's no longer directly correlated to the time you put in. So what's an example? So swapping time for money is like, you charge someone hourly for what you do, or you get paid some sort of a salary based on the hours you worked. The leveraged income could be your profits in your business. So I consider the profits that I earn in my business, right? The profits that come out of that is a leveraged form of income. It still required some of my time. It wasn't completely hands off, but it was leveraged. It was leveraged from my time input, and it was leveraged from other people's efforts as well, because I've got a team and I've got extra elements. So that the profits of my income, profits of my business is a leveraged income source. It's not a passive income source, and it's not an active income source. The more hours I work doesn't mean I have more profits, right? It's not directly correlated to the hours I put in, yet it's not passive. It's not like I did the work once and I never had to do it again. Because let's talk about that. But I'll come back to leverage. What is passive now? How do I define passive? Passive is you do the work once and you get paid either long-term or forever, right? So often it's you front-loaded the work. Most of the passive income I earn, I front-loaded the work. I wrote a book. It took a lot of effort initially to do, and then I ongoing earn royalties every year from people buying the book. That is something where there is a passive income source. It might not be overly high. I can tell you my books right now don't bring me a lot of money, but it is still a passive income source. I've got some courses that I sell on Udemy. Those courses consistently every month give me a passive income. I front loaded. I had to do the work early on and build those courses, but now consistently they pay me income. I also wrote some blog posts many years ago that promoted some products that people chose to click a link and sign up, and I got an affiliate income from that. And I continue to earn affiliate income from those blog posts. I wrote the blog post once, and I'm earning an ongoing income from it forever. I bought shares that pay me dividends. I had to do the work and effort once to decide what share I was going to buy and to make the trade, but then the ongoing income from that dividend is a passive income source. So that's how I define what is a passive income source. If you can do the work once and then get paid long-term or forever, then it's passive. So I don't personally put buying a property in and renting it out. I don't put that into the passive income bucket, because most people, unless maybe you have a team, but most people, I would say buying a house and renting it out falls more under the leveraged income source. I would also say day trading, buying and selling shares. That's not necessarily an active income source because it's not directly proportional to the hours I put in. It's leveraged. I have a certain amount of money. I put it in. The time I've put in is not necessarily directly correlated to how much money I make. So it's a leveraged form of income. Buying and selling shares, buying and selling commodities, buying and selling, flipping houses, buying a house and renting it out. That to me, they're leveraged income sources, not passive income sources. Active income, I try to minimize that as much as possible unless it's fun. So for me, I spend most of my time going, how do I generate more leverage and more passive income sources? So that's kind of the three different.
So I've so many questions. Now, I'm curious, if you were to pay yourself a salary in the business, I'm not sure if you do or not at the moment, but what I heard you say is the dividends or the profits from the business are leveraged income. And I assume then, and I'm curious, would you count, if you paid yourself a salary, would that be the active income? Because that dictates, like, how many days a week the CEO shows up to work and has value exchange for the time that you put in that operational role.
Correct. That's how, because that's a fixed, my salary that I pay myself is a fixed amount that I earn all the time. And that is what I believe I'm swapping my time for money for that money. And that's why over time, I actually haven't necessarily, I don't pay myself what I think a market CEO should earn in a company of my size. Like, I don't pay myself that as a salary. because I also over time have learnt to leverage out my time so it doesn't require a 40-hour week. Like there are other CEOs out there that would work far more hours than I do, which would allow for that higher salary. I could pay myself a higher salary, but again, I feel like the hourly rate exchange is fair. And so that's how I do classify that as active income. You could potentially lump some of that up into the leveraged income, depending on your situation. But I personally count my salary as an active income source.
Yeah, interesting. I like the distinction there, and I'm starting to kind of like put the things that I do into different buckets. What was interesting to me was that a lot of the passive incomes that you shared, or my perception was that they would diminish over time, potentially. So commissions may trail off, book royalties.
And that's why it's not get paid forever. It's get paid forever or long term.
Or long term. Yeah, that's very interesting. But I started turning the wheels in my head of, well, what passive income streams could you create that would potentially appreciate over time rather than depreciate? And shares is actually what I thought of, because if you've got like an index fund or maybe a company or some kind of portfolio that's paying dividends, and those dividends become reinvested, wouldn't that then grow the passive income over time? And you've not put any, if you're not trading it, you've not put any effort into that at all?
If you're doing a dividend reinvestment, you could totally count that as passive income, but it's automatically being reinvested. But that compounding of the creation of it over time, that building up would increase. There is a catch there. That makes the assumption that a company you're invested in paying dividends doesn't cut their dividend rate, right? This is the thing that I think sometimes financial gurus and people out there, they oversimplify and be like, yeah, it's going to, the reality is that sometimes a company crashes and disappears. Sometimes a company cuts their dividend rate. One of the banks that I'm invested in recently cut their dividend rate. Now, I actually think that's smart, and it made me more confident in them because I thought there was more sustainable, lower dividend rate. But that technically means my income from that share has dropped. So it's not as quite simple as going, it will always appreciate, but to me, it's like whether it appreciates or depreciates is irrelevant, because as long as I did the work once and now it's just continuing to go. And every now and then you're going to tweak it. You're going to look at it. You still are going to check on it. But that's the closest thing to passive. If anyone tells you that there's truly a passive business or income stream that you can do it and never think about it again, even a book, let's think about a book. I wrote Red Means Go 10 years ago in 2010. The dividend or the return from that was a lot higher at the beginning, and it's definitely diminished over time. Why? Because I haven't been marketing it, right? If to refresh it, I'm going to probably in the coming years, I'll probably write a version 2 and I'll release version 2 of Red Means Go and update it. And that's requiring work again to kind of put some more life back into that asset. So it's not as simple. I'm yet to discover anything that's purely what some people would define passive.
Yeah, interesting. So, we talked a little bit about our kind of origin stories around, why the desire to build wealth and income is important to them. Our culture and our society, includes this thirst for money, for wealth. The celebrity status thing comes into it a lot. But we both really enjoyed the book Sapiens. And I'm curious on your thoughts and to have a discussion about, on a level as beings, what causes us to chase effectively material wealth. They're virtual dollars, but what they represent is material things or material assets or material havingness. Where do you think that comes from on a primal level?
Oh, well, I think there's a few factors, but the one that comes most to mind, especially for men, is the trying to be that alpha, trying to look like to attract a better mate, right? If I'm more successful and I'm more stable and I have all these finances, I can protect my mate. I can be more attractive to my mate because I'm going to look like I can provide a better stability, security, higher chance of survival. If we take, get rid of all the like politics and all the whatever ideology you might have around it. If we bring it back to a purely mammalian, animalistic thing about it is that we want to procreate. What do we try to do? We want to procreate. We want to continue to survive. When we're choosing a mate, both masculine and feminine, we're choosing a mate that one person's choosing the mate that's most likely going to have successful children that will continue to survive, right? So the more wealth someone has in our current society, there is this almost subconscious positioning of my child with that person is more likely to survive. I have a higher chance of procreating and having successful children and them being able to survive a zombie apocalypse or whatever might happen, right? We've got the assets, we've got the resources. Yeah. So I think that there's that animalistic side of it. I think there's also an underlying human need. I mean, Tony Robbins, if you've ever followed his stuff, I mean, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. He talks about the 6 human needs. And there's 4 human needs that we always all find a way to meet. There's certainty. We all need certainty in our life. But if all we ever had was certainty all the time, we'd get bored. So we need a bit of variety and uncertainty in our life. So we're already finding ways to meet that in our life all the time, certainty and uncertainty. The other thing that we all really need is significance. And we all find different ways to find that significance. And then the fourth thing that we all manage to find is love and connection. Where if you can't get love, you'll settle for connection. We all look for some sort of connection. And then there's 2 more. There's growth and there's contribution. But generally, growth and contribution, people don't need them to survive.
Yeah, but you want to get the others, like the Maslow's hierarchy. You got to have the others sorted before you.
But we already always do. Even if we're doing things that don't seem like they serve us, if you explore deeper down, usually you will find that those things you do, things I do that maybe don't serve me, if I really dig deep, I'll find that they actually are meeting one or a few of those needs in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I keep doing it, even though my mind might tell me that it's not a good idea. It's meeting a need in some way. And so I think at the end of the day, we all, because we need that significance, and right now, the society we live in, a lot of significance is put on celebrity and income.
So much value.
But here's what I think is really interesting. At least I saw this in myself. And I see it when I look out in the marketplace. I think that people care more about the status of looking wealthy than actually having the wealth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The number of people who online, you've maybe seen their videos where they're on a private jet or they're like sitting on a bed with their wads of cash.
And it's been
which
rented.
I can't tell you every single one of them, but there's a high chance that the majority of them hired that jet while it was sitting on a tarmac for 15 minutes to record their video or take their photo, and they paid not all that much money to do it. And then the people with the wad of cash, they borrowed their money from their father or grandfather, and they took every cent they owned out of the bank and in like $1 bills if they're from America, and spread it across their bed. And then as soon as the video was taken, they put it all back in the bank again. I'm a skeptic when it comes to those things, because I know that there are people out there who just do that. And there's a lot of people, and I know it in myself. There was a time when I wore fake Rolexes. There was a time when I wore suits, which I'm not a suit dude. Like, I'll go to a wedding or a funeral, sure, I'll wear a suit. But outside of that, like, I'm not wearing suits. And it came from I need to look a certain way, and I wasn't being that way. And eventually it hit me one day. I was like, I was reminded of what someone said on stage once. It was like, would you rather be rich or look rich if you had to choose? And I was like, yeah, I'd rather be rich and no one know who I am than be a famous someone who looks rich but is broke as. And sadly, I would say the majority of people that you see flaunting their income, it is a broad generalization. It's not everyone. But my story is that the large proportion of people you see out there with their fancy cars and everything else, they're leveraged to the hilt in debt. They're not as wealthy as they appear to be.
There's this great quote from Warren Buffett, which is, when the tide goes out, you will see who was swimming naked.
I like that. I've not heard that one before. That's a good one.
Yeah, I heard it like 2 days ago. It's excellent. And I, from my perspective, I don't think I've never ever really wanted to, look a certain way wealth-wise. But I certainly spent more than I had, because my desire to be wealthy outpaced my actual wealth. In my early 20s, I love my cars. I was buying V8s and buying cars on loans and credit, and business still had debt. And I was one of those businesses that if a large economic event had happened, then I would have been up shit creek, basically. Thankfully, I listened to my accountant. We were growing the business, and she at the time said to me, "Hey Pete, you got to get rid of some of the cars because I had multiple. You got to get rid of got to get rid of some of them because we need the capital inside the business and we need to clean up the balance sheet to be able to grow the business." And I went and did that. And then, I went back to a $1,500 Ford Laser, 1993, with no air conditioning, and was driving that around Sydney.
My first car was a Ford Laser. I love that.
There you go. Well, I was like 23, 24 years old, and and running a business and trying to look professional. And you know what? That was humbling. Not because I was like this big smack of my ego or whatever. It was just like, wow, I actually feel okay in myself no matter what I have material wise. And I was at the time finding that the more material possessions that I accumulated, the less happy that I was. And it wasn't until I fixed my relationship with those and fixed the ego relationship with having those that I could now truly enjoy when I purchase an asset of value, and I'm more likely to purchase them in cash now rather than lending, although for tax and cash flow reasons, I'll lend from time to time still. But the relationship with those assets now is very different because it's not about that I want to feel something or I want a dopamine hit or I want to give myself a hit when I'm sitting in this car driving it. I now feel very different to it. We can't.
I think it's worth.
Yeah, you go.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's worth, sharing. There's one thing I want to share, and then I think it's also worth switching over and talking about wealth. We've covered income and stuff, but what is the actual definition, or how would we define wealth, and how has that changed over time? Because I'm really curious to know how you just shared some of that story, how your story of wealth as a definition of it has shifted. But before I do that, I want to share something. You just thought of it. One of the things I really love, like the idea of buying things and toys and cars and all those things. One of the things that I've always really loved is in Robert Kiyosaki's, not his original book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that really went off. I can't remember which book it was, but one of his more recent books, he talked about something that he and Kim, his wife, do. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. He's basically, any time that he or his wife would like to buy a toy, maybe he wants to buy a fancy new car, the rule they have is they must first make an investment that will bring in that income before he's allowed to buy it. So if he wants to buy a $100,000 car, he first has to go and do a deal that over the next X period of time will bring in $100,000 of income. Then he's allowed to go and buy the toy. And I love that thinking. Like, whether you follow that to the letter, like the thinking of going, before I spend $1, let me invest $1 to make $1 or $2 first, and then I can go and spend it. I just love that thinking.
My rule is a little bit less sophisticated than that, but it's that my toy assets must not exceed 10% of my net worth.
Ah, cool. As long as you got a rule, so just have a rule.
Yeah, I'd love to drop $500,000 on the latest Ferrari. That would be fun, but that means that I have to build my net worth a little bit more before I do that. And the interesting thing is, like, I then go and enjoy the process of building the wealth. And it's less about, it's like less about the prize or the reward or anything like that. And, with the way that our, as you get more and more efficient at your capital management, which is what, wealth building is about. It's, it's becoming the mechanic of your wealth and your income and fine tuning that to the most efficient way possible. I start thinking, well, do I really need to own it? Would it be better to rent it? As in, just when I want to drive it? Would it be better to buy a luxury car business or have a share in that and then drive all kinds of luxury cars rather than buying depreciating assets just hurt my mind on I spend all of my time maximizing my money, but then I feel a bit icky about going and buying a depreciating asset.
I love it. Like, mine's not cars, mine's boats. I've had those exact same thoughts, but around boats. Like, I'm like, I want to buy, actually, I don't want to buy a boat, but even like joining a boat membership. But then I'll start to go, well, I really use it the 30 days a year that I get for my membership. Would it just be cheaper to hire it for the 1 or 2 days a year that I want to use it than actually invest in a membership? These are some of the things that you do start to genuinely look at the return on your asset, your income.
Totally.
So let's shift gears though. Let's talk about wealth. Pete, I really want to understand how you would define wealth now. And then I'm curious to know how a younger version of you may have it defined what wealth was and how that shifted?
Well, look, initially, I don't know if this was wealth, but I think it was financial security was the most important thing to me. You know, my big goal was, and I was 15, we're going around the classroom, and the teacher's saying, what do you want to be when you're 30? And I said, retired. And everyone laughed. And I was like, no, I'm effing serious. And, you know, to me, it was not having to worry about, and I don't know if this is wealth or maybe it's just income security. I'm, you know, curious on your thoughts on it. But, you know, for me, it was, I don't want to ever have to worry about what food is on the table. I don't ever have to think about my day-to-day needs and expenses, right? So like when I go to the petrol station, I don't care what day of the week it is. Like, and I don't want to care. But like, I mean, I drive V8, so I had to build I had to build a system where, you know, fuel cost didn't matter. I never wanted to worry about like buying the organic food at the shops over the other food because, you know, one tastes better and is probably better for me. So I want to definitely go for that. So that was kind of like, you know, initially where I came from. Now I see wealth as, I don't know, you know, I think about most things in life as a system, and I think about most things in life pretty logically. And I see wealth as like a little mini personal company. You know, if you think of like, you know, capitalism and an organization which runs and exists and creates value for its people, creates value for its customers, and then creates value for itself, and, you know, whoever owns it gets to reap the return on that value. I see your own personal wealth as your own like personal organization, personal mini organization, and you have inputs, you have outputs, you have assets, you have liabilities. And, you know, the aim of the game is to grow that. And it's not really much more complicated than that for me. You know, when you spoke about legacy and the primal need to pass on to family or to children, I actually don't feel much of that myself. You know, I've never like, you know, been really interested in doing the family thing or having kids. It's just, you know, not really been on my path. It may be a part of my future. We shall see. But what's interested me with wealth is that it's something that I can build and I can build it for myself. The thing is that it's changed over the years for me, because initially it was about that safety. Initially it was about, okay, well, you know, being comfortable that when I go to Woolies, you know, I don't care if I'm buying the nice sauce or the not nice sauce, you know, I just want to buy what I want. But the interesting thing for me is that once I reached, and it wasn't much, it was like 70 or 80 grand a year, right? It's that diminishing return on how much income you earn proportionate to how happy you are. And after I had all of my basic needs met, and like, you know, how many times a week can you eat out for dinner? It's probably not going to be that healthy if it's 7 days a week. But I never have to worry about, you know, how much that kind of stuff's cost. And I've passed the point of having to worry about the weekly expenses. Now, I realize that is a fucking privilege. That is a privilege. And there may be listeners right now who are going, oh, who is, you know, this dude, this smug motherfucker has no kids, you know, has a decent income and is not, you know, like I live up the beach, I moved to Queensland and my expenses are pretty chill. But the point that I'm making is it was like kind of a, you know, a plane taking off and popping through the clouds. Once I went through that, and, you know, Jim Carrey and a number of other famous celebrities have said, you know, I wish everyone in the world could make all of the money that they dream about so they can realize that money is not the answer. And it's so cliche, but God, it's so true. That once you have all of those basic needs met and you turn around and you look back and you go, oh, okay, cool. That was cool. But, you know, there's no, you know, dogged desire or fear or tension to continue building that. And so
I think you've made an interesting point here that is worth talking about. You mentioned a bit earlier the difference between like financial independence, financial freedom, and wealth, in my mind, at least. Yep. You know, I separate the two, and I didn't always, but I do now. And I think I agree. Like financial independence, financial security, financial freedom, in my definition, is when your passive income exceeds your expenses. And I'm not talking leveraged income. I'm talking about passive income. Yep. When your passive income it goes past your expenses. The quickest way to financial freedom is to keep those expenses low. So if someone is listening to this right now and you're going, things are so fucking tight right now, like I have no money, I know it sucks because
Mm.
I've been there. I have. But I'm actually so grateful that I was. I'm so grateful that I was not making any money in business for years, because you know what? It taught me how to live and lower lifestyle
Mm.
expenses,
Mm.
which meant that when I finally was bringing in income, I didn't fall into the trap of lifestyle creep. I was able to keep my lifestyle fairly stable for a while,
Mm.
which allowed me to achieve that financial freedom faster. So I think that's really important. There's a financial independence aspect that comes from hitting a certain income stream, and whether it's active, leveraged, or passive, getting to a certain level. But there is in my experience, a far bigger freedom that comes when your passive income hits that number. The moment your passive income hits that number, you truly can go, I can breathe. Like, it's like, I think I've said it before in a previous episode, I don't remember, but there is a security that I have knowing that I could shut down my business tomorrow and I'm still okay.
Yeah.
And again, like you, I know that is an absolute privilege to be here, but I fucking worked hard to get here.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with the fact that I got here. And it's one of those things where I think if people can get to that financial independence earlier, lowering your expenses is one of the best ways to do it. So don't, try and not fall into the trap of, oh, I need to upgrade my house. I need to upgrade my house. I need to do these things. I need to look good. I need a new car. I bought a new car in 2006. I didn't need it. I'm never going to buy I can't say I'll never. I have no desire or plans right now to ever buy a brand new car ever again. I'm glad I did it because I learned the lessons of why I thought it's a stupid idea. But like I did all these things and I can see why people fall in that trap. Wealth to me now actually has very little to do with income and money. Like there's riches and sure, having assets becomes part of the wealth. But the real wealth to me is about having that power to choose, the freedom to choose how I spend my time, because time is more valuable than money. And I believe that there are people right now who are in worse financial situations than I am, than you are, Pete, than some of the, many people in the world who potentially are wealthier because they're happier. They're content, they're fulfilled, they're following a passion, they love their life, they're grateful to be alive. Now, I'm grateful to be able to say that I feel like over time, I've learned to have that, whether I have my money or not. But I think true wealth, and I know it's cliche because you hear it, but true wealth truly is in happiness. I think it is. I think that is what's truly wealthy. And riches is great, and I'm all for it. We live in a capitalist society. It's the way the rules of the system is right now. You may as well play the game to win based on the rules that we're living. Like, I'm not saying I fully agree that it's the best solution. That could be another whole episode, but it's the world we're in, and I don't have a problem with it. I just go, this is what is, these are the rules, so I'm going to win it. I'm going to play the game to do well. But even if I didn't, even if all that was gone, I think true wealth is just being able to be happy with whatever you've got, wherever you are.
That's really cool. I think riches, I think what you've alluded to is that, riches are just one resource. Time would be another resource. Skills would be another resource. And you have multiple resources. I want to shift to talking about, because we both kind of like tick that box of having enough, at least leveraged income to live off and be comfortable with. While we're still both, on this journey of playing that game, what I found for myself is, as I was going through the emotional shifts of the last 5 years of kind of going, okay, well, I've ticked that box, now what? Some people don't get there until they're nearly at retirement age, and they go, oh, okay, well, I've done all of the money generating stuff, now what? Some people have a midlife crisis. Or midlife reawakening, a relationship or a big life shift, and they really start to look at, what is their meaning. I feel very thankful that I've been asking myself these questions since I was a kid. Like, where should I go and what should I do? But once I kind of hit that goal, income wise, and fairly leveraged, like expected to continue, and I have a ridiculously large asset, which should stay fairly resilient. I'm curious, Carl, and I want to come back to the conversation around, switching to contribution and how that goes. But before we go there, what about when it's taken away? Or what about when it's at risk of being taken away? Because I know I sleep really, really, really well if I've got 100 grand in the bank. I sleep really well. And, no matter what's happening with the business, it can go up and down a little bit, no matter what's going on in my personal life, no matter, if I had too many parties at one of the apartments I was living at and got evicted with some friends. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I'm safe because, I've got this cash pile, and I will no longer have to feel that hustle and stress in my gut with how I'm running my business and how I'm running my life. And so I'm curious for you, what comes up when you think about things being taken away? Because right now in the current economic climate, people are having things taken away from them. We are both, like everyone is, at risk of having things taken away from us. And
100%.
I have felt a little bit of that. I did the numbers and I did the calculations. What if our income stopped and we, had to continue to run the business? How many months could we last based on the cash reserves and the income that we have? So yeah, what do you think about that when I asked that?
Well, it's interesting. One of my first thoughts when you talked about your $100,000 in the bank account was like, oh, that'd be worth exploring. Where at what point did you decide $100,000 was your number to have in the bank?
Just a gut feeling.
Yeah, but I'd say somewhere along the line there's something that created that story for you.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't have a number like that. Definitely when the number's going up, or like if I log into the bank and I see it's over 200 grand or something in that particular set of accounts, like that makes me feel good. Sure. I don't know. Like if I feel like it's going to be taken away from me, there's a few things. If I only had active and leveraged income, I think I would be far more fearful. Like even in the last, how many months it's been, not even that long, my share portfolio has, I think, more than halved. Like it's dropped dramatically. I've got a mix of index funds and specific shares. And so, I've had the index hits, which are around 30 or so % at time of recording, dropped. And then I've had other shares that have dropped far more than that. And then I've got others that have gone up. So that hurts when you see that. But because I've got a long-term view, I'm not going, oh, that's terrible. And I have other income sources, so I'm not fussed about necessarily the dividend hits. I don't know. I sleep pretty good knowing that I could shut down my business and still be okay. It would be if those passive income sources were at risk. That's when you would probably see me start to freak out a bit. That's when I'd be like, oh shit. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still monitoring. Because there's obviously a certain point that if I don't pay attention and take action, if something happened in my more active and leveraged income sources, that if I'm not careful, my passive income would be keeping them afloat, and then I'm going negative because of that. So there is a monitor. But for me, there's an initial reaction of freaking out. There is. I'm human, of course. There's fear. There's all that comes up. But if I actually take a breath and I step back and I let myself relax, or I meditate, or someone like you, a friend, or someone just helps me kind of come back to reality. The reality is, it's like, you know what? It's okay. And it's all happening as it needs to happen. And there's lessons here. And, if it has to shut down, I have to lose all. And even if I lost all my passive income, like that would suck. But we live in a country in Australia that has an amazing safeguards. Like it's not impossible, but it is pretty damn hard. I've got a good family situation. I can go back and live with them. Like it'd be pretty damn hard for me to be so down on my luck. And I only know this because I did this exercise a few years ago. I used to get so freaked out that I was going to make a bad decision in my business and I was going to lose it all. It would freak me out. And I worked with my coach, Divya, and I remember she just took me through a process. And I've done this to myself numerous times, where she goes, okay, you make a bad decision and it costs you the business. You go out of business. Then what? There was just lots of, and then what? And I was like, then I'd feel bad and ashamed. Okay, you feel shit, bad and ashamed. And then what? Oh, I'd have to go and live with my parents. Okay, so you live with your parents, and then what? Oh, I'd have to go on Centrelink and get, the doll. Oh, okay, well, and then what? And like, eventually I got to a point where it was like, you know what? Yeah, my ego would take a bruise and a few cuts and it would hurt and it would be humbling as hell. But my situation is pretty good. And I really, I don't have kids, and I think that's something that it is worth calling out. That, when we're talking about this stuff, does not escape me that we are 30-year-old dudes who don't have kids. We don't have the same commitments. And there are other 30-year-olds, even 20-year-olds who've got the family, they got the kids. My sister, I have some of these conversations and she doesn't have the ability, or doesn't feel she has the ability to take the same level of risks that I might. because of her family situation. And I think that it's worth understanding that everyone's situation is different. But we live in such a great society in Australia. I'm so grateful to have been born here. Bottom line, I'm not afraid to lose it. Really, I'm not.
I think at the end of the day, the self-actualization level of Maslow's hierarchy aside, all we need is like food and shelter. And, I've done like a lot of travel, and luxury travel does nothing for me. I am happiest when I'm camping or when I'm in a camper van by the beach somewhere and I have a backpack, I have a little bit of food in my belly, I have sunshine, and that's it. I just enjoy the disconnection from life's stuff. And even if you have kids and responsibilities and stuff, like really inspect that. If you have fear coming up, oh my God, I can't lose this income or I would be on the street, like just really inspect that, because, that fear is unnecessary. There is a reality that you may be in a tough situation if you were to lose your business or lose your income, or if right now you are in a situation where that has happened to you. But being fearful and feeling the pain and the tension emotionally, that is optional. That is optional. So I think we should finish, Carl. This has been a really great show and I'm enjoying it. We both shifted gears.
We should finish I think the last bit about contribution.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. We both shifted to, our mindsets around, the money generation now that we've, got our basic needs met and we're really comfortable with our incomes. We've both talked for the last year or so about shifting to contribution. Tell me what that means for you, because I think this has been more your idea and I've been kind of like receiving it, which has been really cool.
It came from, I looked around a lot of my other really successful friends, people who make a lot more money than me. And I love hanging out with them. I love I love the way they think, but it doesn't completely gel with the way I think. And I was getting to this point where I was just like, I don't like, what's the point of growing the business further? Like I was now at a point where I was like, well, I don't know, like I can see the opportunity. I can see, the opportunities there, but why would I do it? And I was floundering for years.
Because you sold your business, like you've
my IT business process years ago.
Yeah, and see, I'm still on the same train that I started when I was 15, right? So like I'm one of those entrepreneurs that I might be a lifer in this business, who knows? But you got off the train, and so I think got the perspective of like starting out and then looking back and going, okay, well, how do I want to do this if I'm starting from scratch again, which you did.
Yeah, and it was also just seeing people who make millions of dollars, not in revenue, but in their profits in their pocket, and seeing that they still weren't happy. And they're amazing people, but not fulfilled and fully happy. And so I look at that and go, cool. Well, and I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. I was on his boat, and I asked this exact question. I said, look, guys, you guys make more money than me. I was with a group of people, and I said, look, I'm just really been racking my brain for the last 12 months. Like, what is the point? Like, why would I grow this? Why would I keep growing? Because it feels like it might just create more headaches. I got more of this. Like, why would I add that to my life? Like, what's it really worth? And they said, one guy pulled me aside and said, look, I can tell you exactly why. And he basically told me that he spends $100,000 a month. Now, what he doesn't realize, like,
on what
I took away from that. Well, I asked him, like, it was on a horse, on the boat, on like all lifestyle shit. And I came away from that going, well, like, yeah, I was like,
awesome.
Wait, hold on. Basically, his point to me was, you'll make more money because you're going to spend more money. That's what his point to me was. And I was like, I came away from it going, wait, why? Like, why would I do that? That just seems crazy.
Yeah.
But here's what shifted. So that was my old mentality. I was kind of like, I was like, keep expenses low. That's how you achieve financial freedom. Don't go crazy. And then I read a book called How to Be Rich by J. Paul Getty. It's an average book. You don't feel like you need to rush out and get it. But at one stage, he was the richest man in the world. And I picked it up at his museum in LA. And he's since passed away. Anyways, I read this book after probably 18 months of contemplating this thought. And there was just a little throwaway paragraph in there where he's talking about he's got a cousin that makes far less than money than him, but he believes he's more wealthy. And he was talking about how the way he thinks about wealth is the point of money is not about hoarding piles of cash, which I think a lot of people think of and do. The point of building more cash and more assets is so that you can produce more jobs. You basically, ultimately, so you can contribute more and create a better quality of life for yourself and others around you by creating jobs and employment, by spending that money in the economy, which starts to pay. And that was when things started to shift in my head. And I was like, hold on a second. If I buy this thing, it's not about what I'm getting. I mean, sure, I get something for it, but if I buy this thing, I'm actually helping that small business, especially if it's a small business, stay employed or put food on their table. It all of a sudden started to shift. I was like, actually, if I continue to grow, we're going to need more team members, which means I'm employing more people, which means I'm helping more families. I'm also, not only that, I'm helping more clients, which is helping their business and their clients. And if I'm making more wealth and I'm making more money personally, so I choose to upgrade where I live and I spend a bit more money where I'm living, or I go to a cafe more often, or I'm now helping put that. And all of a sudden, the fireworks in my brain started to create these connections. And I started to go, by not spending money, I'm actually being selfish. This was the shift in my story. By holding back and going, no, I'm not going to spend that money. By me going, I'm going to keep my expenses low. By me not growing my business because it will make more headaches for me. It was a smack in the face where I was like, I'm being selfish by doing that.
Wow. And
it was good to a point. I actually think that in my experience, I can only talk from my own experience. If I'd had this contribution mentality at the start of my business, I don't think I would have got to where I am today. I'm not saying it's not possible. If you're already in that like contribution, man, I want to just love the world, I'm all for it. I do wonder how powerful that is in the beginning and hustling and building and getting you to a point. But definitely once you get to a point like I have and potentially you have too, Pete, that's when the shift of starting to go, well, I'm good. I can stop being selfish. I don't need to put the oxygen mask on myself anymore. So I can now be putting oxygen masks on other people. And that's the shift. It's starting to go, the power of money, like capitalism was always originally intended to be, is to be that rising tide that lifts all boats. You have the ability to now contribute and give a higher quality. And that's the biggest shift that has happened to me in decades.
Beautiful. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that, except that when you shared that with me, I think it was about a year ago, I was going through the stage. Well, a couple of years ago, I went through the stage of questioning with my team, saying, "Hey, look, guys, I've met my income goal, so I'm a little bit less motivated to grow the business now, and I'm more interested in optimizing my time rather than optimizing more revenue or income from the business." And the team were like, "Oh, this is my leadership team. This is in our quarterly planning," and they're like, "Oh, okay. So, so what do we do then?" And I was like, "Well, maybe I'll pick another goal. I've had ambitions to do some motorsport. So yeah, it'd be nice to have $100,000 a year spare to go and do that. And so let's make some more money so Pete can go and do motorsport." And you know what? That just did not motivate me to grow the business. It didn't tick the box for me. I was like, damn, that sucks. Because I still haven't gone down that journey. It's not because I've got lack of income available for it. I've got it. But that as a goal wasn't something that intrinsically motivated and got my fire started. And then when you shared that with me, and I think I was talking about, hey, maybe I'll just get rid of my sales team and switch to a chat bot, and it'll be much more efficient, easier, less people to worry about. And you were like, well, Pete, you're taking away 4 or 5 people's jobs. And that's not contribution. That's the opposite of contribution. I was like, oh, wow, shit. And having a bigger impact is actually to ask the question, well, how can we make more money and have more impact and be a better business and help more people if we keep the sales team on and actually have them, do more. And so I really appreciated that download from you and that shift in myself. And that's been a really good guide. And what I was able to take back to my team, and this was something again, that I kind of took from you, is I shared with my team, hey guys, you know what? Like, I've met my goals in this business, and I shared this with the whole company. I said, hey, I've met my goals in this business. I've met my goals with income. And so this is no longer Peter's responsibility to grow this business. This is a collective responsibility. And we get to choose as a collective where we go and how we do things. I own the asset, so I'm going to get the benefits of having the asset ownership. And for the level that I participate in the business, I'm going to get a fair exchange in return from that. I need to earn a market salary from the business. It's, something else that's been a part of that conversation, right? Peter needs to earn a market salary for creating, growing, building, and leading and running this business. However, it's everyone's responsibility to choose how fast we want to grow, how we want to contribute, where we want to take the business, and that's a collective decision. And having that shift in how I adjusted the business, some may think that's too altruistic and not really aligned with your goals and your values, and that's totally fine. I'm sharing my experience and where I'm at. That felt great. It feels great. And I also am able to, outside of the business, I have other projects now where I'm able to spend time doing things. And one thing that I wanted to share is, I had this moment, it was a couple of years ago, it was when I started the weight loss journey, and I'd done a bunch of therapy and some acupuncture, and I was doing some body work, and I started doing like spiral clearing. And one of my mentors / practitioners who was helping me with that work said to me, Pete, you're like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 in the business right now. Because I was asking him, what do I do with my life? How do I find fulfillment and meaning, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, look, Pete, you're like an 8 or a 9 in the business right now, but you might be a 4 out of 10 in cooking. You might be 5 or 6 out of 10 in relationships. You might be 3 out of 10 in physical health for your body. So they are skills and disciplines that you can go and work on to have fulfillment in life, outside of what you've built in the business. Because it's like, look, man, like, you don't need to read any more business books. Like you're there, you're good, you're solid. And I feel that. I feel like 8.5, 9 out of 10 comfortable business acumen. Doesn't mean I could go and run $1 billion conglomerate.
No, but to the level of business that you have.
Well, where I'm at, I'm feeling very, very confident. But I've had so much fulfillment in the last 3 years from exploring all of those other areas of my life where I was not competent. And wealth building was one of them. And so I've been on that journey for the last 2 years of learning how to build wealth, because I'd built income, shitloads of income, but I'd not yet built wealth. So
I would say also you've been building true wealth as well, because you've been working on your health, you've been working on your relationships. Because similarly to you, I was at that point, right? I was at that point, I was sitting comfortably going, okay, I don't really need much. But that was also causing me, because I had a lot of downtime, I didn't have to work a lot. It gave me a lot of time to think and find problems. And I started looking at other areas in my life. I looked at my relationship, I looked at my health, I looked at other areas and was like, oh. And I think that's what can happen, is that if we don't have that wealth view of being more holistic earlier, what can happen is you do the money thing. And then some people, I think, stay on the money train because they're afraid of looking at how unhappy they are in the rest of their life.
Oh, that one.
Ooh. That might have hurt someone.
That hits hard.
I think that just like people drink alcohol, they do various things because it's an escape. They watch TV. I used to watch TV as an escape from reality. Yeah. I think some people do that with chasing money. Is the same. Yeah.
And, hustle is addictive. That being in a fear state of feeling like not having enough is addictive, and that's really something to inspect. We might even do another episode on that.
All right, we should wrap up. This has been a lot longer than we probably originally intended, but I hope it's been super useful for you. Well done on listening this far. Love to hear your comments, feedback. What did you love most about this episode? Was there something we said that really pissed you off and you feel like we're entitled fucks? Tell us. We want to hear about it. Genuinely, like, we want that feedback. At the end of the day, I'm comfortable. If you hate me for some reason, that's okay. That's on you. But I would love to get your feedback. I know Pete would love to get your feedback. Leave us a review. Tell others if you think this has been useful. Share this episode around. You can find all the show notes, everything you need on rising.show. It's where you can learn more about Peter. You can learn more about me, how you can connect with us, all of that stuff. We'd love for you to subscribe. It's always been a pleasure. I'm so grateful to be here with my co-host, Peter Moriarty. I'm going to say my goodbyes. Pete, you can say goodbye too.
Thanks, mate. Great to have all of the listeners on the show. This just may be the episode that moves the needle for you on your mindset with regards to wealth. If you are interested in talking more about that, please drop your comments below. We would love to have a discussion with you about it. And we look forward to spending time with you in the next episode. Take care.